Hello and welcome to Refuting Rationality, the show where we refute the YouTube atheist Rationality Rules. In today's episode, is atheism a religion? I went into this episode thinking that yes, atheism is a religion, but even though Mr. Rationality makes some fallacious arguments, I kinda have to agree at least partially with his conclusion. So let's get into it and see exactly what's what.
In response to the assertion that atheism is a religion, many atheists reply with either Bill Maher's famous retort that atheism is a religion like abstinence is a sex position, or the more classical and potentially less offensive reply that atheism is a religion like not collecting stamps is a hobby. And both of these replies hit back hard, often putting an end to the argument then and there. No, I'm kidding, of course. The argument doesn't end there. Ever. The conversation may then go in countless directions, but if you're conversing with an educated apologist, he or she will generally reply with a statement along the lines of, non-stamp collectors don't go around mocking stamp collectors, writing books, or creating websites dedicated to non-stamp collecting. Which, to be fair, isn't a terrible point.
First, let's address Bill Maher's response. If he is of the mind that theism is not a religion, then he would be right. If, however, he thinks theism is a religion, then his whole abstinence being a sex position thing would be a false analogy. And props to Mr. Rationality for including a theistic response to the stamp collector analogy and even admitting that it's a good response.
What's more is that eventually the non-stamp collectors would have to form active organisations to represent them and oppose such oppression, in much the same way that atheists have had to form organisations such as the American Atheists and the British Humanist Association, which are just that, organisations and associations, not religions. But I am getting way ahead of myself. To really assess whether or not atheism is a religion, we first need to clearly define what religion is, and in doing this, emphasise what all religions have in common. From there, we'll be able to clearly define what atheism is, and see if it too possesses these commonalities.
Now, did you notice the mistake he made? He begged the question. He starts by saying, we need to look up the definition of religion. And that's a fine place to start. However, then he says he needs to look at the commonalities between religions. And this begs the question, because this assumes that atheism is not a religion. It would be better to define religion, then see what religions fit that definition. Looking for commonalities between religions already assumes that they are religions. Basically, he's already defined religion to not include atheism.
The problem, however, is that there are literally thousands of definitions of the word religion. Many people define it to be a belief in a god or a group of gods, which suits theistic religions just fine because that's actually the definition of theism, not religion. But it fails to incorporate religions that don't believe in a god, such as some sects of Buddhism. While on the other hand, many define religion to be a pursuit or interest followed with great devotion, which does indeed incorporate all theistic and non-theistic religions. But it's such a vague definition that it also incorporates organisations, enterprises, associations, charities, sports, and virtually anything that can be considered to be a hobby or obsessed over, making it a meaningless definition. In fact, in realisation of how difficult religion is to define, Hent de Vries, in his collection of essays titled Religion Beyond a Concept, ended up settling with the definition being a semantic black hole. And if I'm honest, I have to concur. However, there is indeed a definition that incorporates all of the major religions, and in doing so reveals the commonalities that they all have. The following definition incorporates Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Sikhism, and paganism. Religion is a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, especially when considered as the creation of a superhuman agency or agencies, usually involving devotional and ritual observances, and often containing a moral code governing the conduct of human affairs.
And here is where you can really see the begging the question coming through. He chooses a definition that fits what he wants to define religion as, so he looks for one that does not include atheism. Now, the first part of his definition seemed fine. A set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe. The problem comes with the next part of the definition that uses words like especially or usually. If it's just especially or usually something, it's pretty easy to ignore that. As for me, I think a good definition of religion is a combination of two. These first, a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, and second, pursued with great zeal. So, a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, pursued with great zeal. That sounds like a reasonable definition to me.
And as for the commonalities that all of these major religions have, and more importantly, what organisations, enterprises, associations, charities, sports and hobbies do not, they all prescribe a supernatural worldview, dictate humanity's ultimate role and purpose, have a creation story, prescribe rules and regulations, have sacred texts, objects and or locations, have prophets and require faith.
Now, I could have just intercut between each of those, but that would have just made more work for me, so I'll just do it in one audio and just go through each of them. If you define natural as anything within the universe, all space, time, and matter, anything beyond that would be supernatural, and thus any worldview, except one that believes in an eternal universe, would be a supernatural worldview. I would consider the Big Bang to be a supernatural event, and evolution itself would be supernatural, dictating humanity's purpose. Well, even if you say there is no purpose, that would still be dictating what the purpose is. So even nihilists have a hold of you on that. Creation story. Well, that's an easy one. Big Bang and evolution. Duh. Atheism certainly shares that one. Prescribed rules and regulation. Okay, I'll let you have that one. The sanctity and reverence one. I think he's going against his own premise with this one. Everybody holds something to be sacred, and this doesn't just apply to individuals either. Does Buddhism have prophets? Does paganism have prophets? I will assume for the sake of argument that paganism has prophets, but unless you want to say that Charles Darwin was a prophet, I don't think you can say Buddhism has any prophets, because I'm pretty sure the only prophet in that religion would have been Buddha himself. And lastly, faith. Of course, atheism requires faith. Everything you do requires faith. You notice how he misdefined faith on there. He'll define it again later, so I'll bring it up then.
So now that we have clearly defined what a religion is, and more importantly, emphasised what commonalities they all share, let's now define what atheism is and see if it too shares these commonalities. The word atheism is derived from ancient Greek, where the prefix a means without and theos means God. Hence, atheism literally means without God or godless. Or in other words, atheism is a single position held in regard to a single question. It's not even an ideology, let alone a religion, and we'll prove this in just a second.
Now this comes to the point that you get most often from atheists. They want to claim that atheism is just a lack of belief, instead of a belief that there is no God. He mentions that the prefix a means without, and theos means God. I don't know if theos would be the root, or if there's some other name for it, but it's accurate so far regardless. But he didn't bother to define the suffix, which is ism, and ism means belief. So, if you say it out loud, depending on where you put the hyphen, you either get without God belief, which is what the atheist would like it to be, or you get without God belief, which seems more reasonable, especially if you're stating your position on a matter. My position is I have no position. That's an especially bad position to take when you're trying to argue. Now, let's get to that proof that he promised.
Now I would say let's start with the supernatural worldview, but atheists aren't characterised as having a supernatural worldview at all. Rather, they're characterised as having a materialistic worldview. So, don't all atheists have a materialistic worldview? The answer is no, they don't. There are thousands of spiritual groups that don't believe in a god or gods, including many sects of Buddhism, that believe that phenomena such as consciousness is the result of non-material and often supernatural forces, and hence, not all atheists share the same worldview. Okay, what about humanity's ultimate role and purpose? All atheists believe that humanity's ultimate purpose in life is to reproduce and to survive as a species, right? But again, no. To provide just one example, the majority of nihilists, people who believe that life is meaningless and pointless and would prefer for life to all go extinct, are actually atheist. Hence, not all atheists believe in the same purpose of life. What about a creation story? Don't all atheists believe in the Big Bang and evolution? Nope. While most atheists accept the evidence for the Big Bang and evolution, many don't. For example, there are many conspiracy theorists that don't believe in a god or gods, but are certain that humanity is the product of super-intelligent aliens, rather than the product of evolution by natural selection. Hence, not all atheists accept the Big Bang and evolution. What about rules and regulations? Don't all atheists believe in equal rights, euthanasia and abortion? Again, no. These subjects are heavily debated among atheists. For example, Matt Dillahunty and Christine Kruszelnicki are both atheist activists who happen to woefully disagree with one another on the subject of abortion. Okay, what about sacred texts, objects and/or locations? Don't all atheists venerate God is not great? Nope. In fact, many atheists dislike God is not great, and they dislike the atheist movement altogether, such as Noam Chomsky. But what about the atheist prophets? All atheists worship Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins and Dennett, don't they? Well, by extension of many atheists disliking the atheist movement as a whole, the answer is most certainly not. Furthermore, atheists who do appreciate these men, including myself, don't think of them as prophets, but rather as people who are championing a worthy cause. If Sam Harris is a prophet of atheism, then Woody Harrelson is a prophet of vegetarianism. And finally, we come to faith. All atheists have faith that there isn't a God, surely. But once again, no. Most atheists are agnostic, to varying degrees, and are simply not convinced that the claim of theism has met its burden of proof. If not being convinced of theism requires faith, then so does not being convinced of the Kraken's existence. But don't get me started on the definition of faith. Really, don't.
Trust or confidence in someone or something based on evidence and reason. That is an accurate definition of faith. The religious faith definition he throws out there does not exist. It seems close to the definition of blind faith, which is what atheists have. But he throws in all that doctrines of a religion based on spiritual convictions to muddy the water. And that was a bit of a long clip for me to just focus on the last bit. But like I said at the beginning of this video, I actually partially agree with his conclusion. Because theism is not a religion. Since I do not consider general theism to be a religion, why should I consider atheism to be a religion? The whole stamp collector analogy that he began with is wasted. All you have to say is atheism is a religion like theism is a religion. It's not. It is an ideology. And of course he hasn't yet proved that atheism is not an ideology, which he said he would do. But so far just focused on proving it's not a religion. And basically his whole argument in this last 3-minute clip was atheism is not a religion because different atheists believe different things. Does that sound familiar? Does a Baptist believe the same thing as a Catholic? Does a Lutheran believe the same thing as a Seventh-day Adventist? No? Then I guess according to him, Christianity isn't a religion either.
Anyhow, as demonstrated, atheism really is a single position held in regard to a single question, and hence it's not even an ideology, let alone a religion. But now that we have clarified that atheism isn't a religion, the real question can be asked. Can the many atheistic groups and ideologies, such as humanism and secularism, be accurately called religions? After all, the likes of Catholicism and Shiaism are considered to be ideologies as well as religions, so why isn't this also the case for humanism and secularism? Well, just as all Christians are theists, but not all theists are Christians, the same can be said for ideologies and religions. While all religions are ideologies, not all ideologies are religions. Humanism and secularism are ideologies in the same way that vegetarianism and libertarianism are ideologies. They are a collection of ideas and values that form the basis of an economic and/or political theory and policy. And unlike religions, they don't require a belief in the supernatural, have a creation story, have prophets, or require faith. The only way one can categorize humanism and secularism as religions is to use a definition of religion that also categorizes other organizations, enterprises, associations, ideologies, and hobbies as a religion too. Hence, the many atheistic groups are also not religions.
So he never demonstrated that atheism is not an ideology. He just asserts it. But I do have a dictionary, so technically by definition it may not be an ideology, though I'm pretty sure I called it one earlier in this video. However, I stand by it because your belief about God is so fundamental to every other belief you have that I would count it as an ideology. But sure, technically, by definition, it is not an ideology or a religion. However, some of those atheist organizations may very well be religions. But since he didn't go into specifics about the organizations or what they believe, and I don't want to go finding out, and because this video is about atheism, not atheistic churches, I won't bother. But he did misdefine ideology. Again, he chose a definition that used the word especially in it. Now, I haven't exactly studied my dictionary very much, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't often use the word especially in its definitions. I'm sure it does sometimes, but I don't think it's very often. And it definitely doesn't use it for ideology. I think Mr. Rationality needs a new dictionary. And again, remember, everything requires faith. Just getting out of bed requires faith that your legs still work. So remember, when you debate an atheist, atheism is not his religion. It is a fundamental tenet or doctrine of his religion, but it's not his religion. While we're on the subject, evolutionism is also a religious doctrine, not a religion itself. A religion would encompass multiple doctrines, not just one.